Well, Stevie, as you can tell, not much has gone on in the world of mixed martial arts this past week. The main story is still the canceled UFC 151 show from Las Vegas, and I even saw a funny joke saying Chael Sonnen should have showed up in Vegas at the arena on Saturday night, sort of like for an empty arena match.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Now, you saw the whole thing about Jones offering to pay the fighters their show money and retracting the offer, right?
Well, he did offer certain fighters, and the majority of fighters that he spoke to told him to take his money where the sun don't shine.
Well, yeah, that's basically it's being described as a Rudo heel move on his part that, he said, well, I'll give you guys these money, but everybody's being mean to me, so now I won't.
One story from this fiasco that's still, it just rubs me the wrong way, is one of the trainers for John Jones is accusing Chael Sonnen of knowing that Dan Henderson was pulling out of the fight and was secretly training for a fight against John Jones on September the 1st.
Oh, no. Let's not get into this whole conspiracy theory bullshit. I mean, it's already enough of a drama anyway. We don't need people going, he knew he was going to pull out of this fight all along. It was a secret strategy. Oh, please, fuck that.
Yeah, it's... I said last week, I'm going to say again this week, this story is still far from over. So, I mean, we're probably going to have one or two more things. We see fights have been moved to different cards. The name escapes me at the moment, Stevie, but a fighter was actually glad that the show got canceled because it turns out he has a spinal fracture and is going to take some time off to heal.
Yeah, there are a few guys that it's actually benefiting, and not the least of which, it's benefiting everybody in Toronto because they've wound up with a much more lucrative main event for their pay-per-view. So
yeah, John Jones and Lyoto Machida.
No. John Jones and Peter Belfort. But hey, if we want to move on from this and talk about some other stories that will be ongoing for quite a while, I've got a Jason Mayhem Miller headline for you.
Oh, goody. What do you do now?
No, it's nothing new. It's when I say continuing, I'm referring to the fact that it's the ongoing saga of the church he broke into and sprayed down with a fire extinguisher everywhere because there are developments in that story. I guess we get the breaking news music. I thought that was exclusive to the Raw Reaction, but if we got it, I'll take it. I'll go ahead and read the breaking news. The Orange County District Attorney has charged Jason Mayhem Miller with a misdemeanor count of vandalism for which he could receive either probation or up to 1 year in jail. His arraignment has been scheduled for November 21st in the Orange County Superior Court, where he can either enter a plea of guilty or not guilty.
So he's getting probation, basically?
Well, it sounds like he could get sentenced to a year probation if he's found guilty at trial.
I don't see how he's innocent. They found him naked on a couch when they came in.
Well, if he takes a plea, he could get like 6 months or something. Who knows?
Okay. Let's start with some news, Stevie, and there's quite a few actually that's not UFC 151 related. The cast for the Ultimate Fighter 16 was announced. 32 welterweights will be fighting for that contract on September the 14th. 32, they're going to have the typical fight your way into the house episodes. And of the 32, there's 29 Americans, 2 Canadians, and 1 fighter from Brazil from 22 to 34 years of age. There's some interesting names in this list. I'm not going to go through the entire 32 list, but certain fighters who caught my eye have been Sam Alvey from Bellator, former Strikeforce champ Cortez Coleman, IFL veteran Bristol Marooned, Strikeforce fighter Ricky Legier Jr., M1 vet Igor Araujo, and former Bellator and Strikeforce fighter Saad Awad.
No, see, I always thought it was Marunde. Maybe it is Marooned. What do I know?
Oh, you know me. I love to butcher names on this show.
I read it like it's a Brazilian name. That's why I go Marunde when I read that.
Now, another name on here is Eddie Ellis. he's won 9 of his last 10 fights.
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive streak. It bodes well for him in the competition.
All right, well, of 32 fighters, 29 are American. That's a little much. I don't know. Maybe I'm not sure. This is one of those things where they don't have the open casting calls anymore. So they basically cherry pick the talent, and not to sound nationalistic or anything, but if you're doing a show, the best 32 welterweights not in UFC, 29 of them are American?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that they couldn't have found more in Canada or more in Brazil or more in anywhere. They probably just went with the names of fighters that they already knew because they'd seen their fights. So, that's going to be a problem for it. If you're going to expect them to see Canadian talent, they're going to have to get more tapes from Canada or have a Canadian branch office or something.
Well, speaking of Canadian shows, Stevie, the TriStar Gym in Montreal is going to be having TriStar Fight Night MMA series coming in 2013, and basically GSP's the head trainer from TriStar is saying, there needs to be a new Quebec show out there.
Now, is Yves Jabouin one of the TriStar guys, or am I wrong?
I believe he is, yes.
Yeah, because I just saw a headline when I was looking for MMA news tonight, and it said Yves Jabouin hitting his stride just in time for UFC on Fuel 5. So apparently his training camp is going really well.
Yeah, TriStar, of course, is GSP's camp. Also coming out of that camp is Rory McDonald, who's got a big fight coming in December against BJ Penn.
That's right.
All right. Well, former guest on this show, Ian McCall, was released from jail this week, and his trainer is hoping that he learned his lesson.
Yeah, it sounds like he's also probably going to be able to plead out and get a good deal, so I'm not too worried about him. I already saw him back on Twitter within the last day, and he seemed to be in good spirits and joking around back to his usual self.
Now, an interesting fight on UFC on Fox 5 has been announced. John Albert will be fighting Scott Jorgensen.
That's a pretty big fight for both guys. A step up for either one who wins it.
I don't know. Jorgensen, I don't want to say, lose and he's cut, but he's one of those fighters where he's on the tail end, I'm thinking.
He's venerable enough that even if he lost, I don't think he would be cut. I mean, he's been pretty close to a title shot a couple of times here, so I don't see him going away anytime soon. And speaking of title shots, have we covered the fact that Frankie Edgar gets to face Jose Aldo?
No, that's later in I had that in my list, but if you want to talk about it now, we can.
Well, yeah, it's just kind of interesting that Eric Koch has an injury and he pulls out of that fight, and all of a sudden Frankie Edgar goes from never fighting in that division to being the number one contender, just like that.
Chael Sonnen.
I know, right? It's funny how those sort of things seem to be working out lately.
Yeah, but do you think there was any pressure on Aldo, saying, do I take this fight against a guy who hasn't been in the weight class? Do I look like the next John Jones here, or do I man up and take the fight?
Yeah, I don't think there was any way Aldo was turning down the fight after what happened with UFC 151. Plus, he has more time to prepare, so it's not quite short notice like it was with the whole Henderson-Jones debacle.
Actually announced on that same day. It was funny because I was watching the sports shows up here in Canada, and they had not breaking UFC news, but they had a UFC news bit and talking about this fight, and also Patrick Cote. It's been announced he'll be fighting on the UFC Montreal show coming up in November against Alessio Sakara.
Okay, well, that'll be a good chance for redemption for him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Stevie, I have a great story for you, and I know you're going to have an opinion on it. Tim Sylvia and Andre Arlovski. You want to go ahead, or shall I?
You can take it. I'll chime in when you're done.
Well, their big fight in the Philippines this past week, live on, pay-per-view through the computer. The main event was a no contest. Basically, it was a soccer kick DQ, and the refs in the Philippines decided it's a no contest. And scary enough, Sylvia and Arlovski want to do this one more time. I
really don't know what the point of them doing it again is. I I see no reason for it. If that's the comment you were looking to provoke out of me, success, you've achieved it, because it's an irrelevant fight against two guys who are past their prime. It didn't need to happen in the first place.
I felt I won the 2 rounds, said Sylvia. He landed a great 3-punch combo and dropped me and kicked me a couple of times. The referee wanted to stop the fight, I guess. I think we need a rubber match.
No, we don't. No. No, we do not.
You're not going to turn into Daniel Bryan now, are you?
I'm not going to go yes, 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 or no, no, no. I'm just saying, in the words of Dave Meltzer, well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. Also, speaking of former guests on the show, Mark Holst was fighting in Jordan this past week at Cage Warriors Fight Night 7, and he fought a 7-time Jiu-Jitsu world champion, Leo Santos, and the fight only lasted 1 minute and 15 seconds. Santos was able to take Holst down, secure an arm triangle, and Holst passed out. So, you get caught. You get caught in MMA, Stevie. We see it all the time. And when the referee goes to check your arm and it's like a piece of wet spaghetti, not a good sign. I saw Holst on Facebook the other day, and he on his Facebook quoted that, or said that, he's looking forward to his next fight. He's in training again, and he is just, he wants to go right back to it.
Not to distract you from this story or anything, but Des Bryant clearly thought that was a live ball, because he just kept running for the end zone there. And you're trying to talk about Mark Holst, and I'm like, dumbass, your knee was already on the ground. What are you still running for?
Stevie.
Sorry, but that would, I mean no offense to our guest, but just watching Des Bryant be a dumbass just totally took my eye off of Mark Holst. But it's one of those learning experiences for him. He'll come back a better fighter from that loss.
Well, Matt Mitrione has a new opponent at UFC 155. Rob Broughton is out with an injury, and Mitrione will now face Phil DeFries.
Oh, interesting. Met Phil when they did the UFC on Fuel here in Omaha. He's a very nice guy, and I'll look forward to seeing that fight.
Oh, man. No, I remember because the Jordan fight with Mark Holst was at 2 p.m. locals when the showtime started, and Holst's fight was 2/3 of the way through the card, and I was at that time in like a very picturesque park taking wedding photos with the wedding party, and I snuck away for a bit, checked my BlackBerry, and I see Nick Castiglia from Rec MMA. He was actually in his corner in Jordan texting and basically saying, everybody gets caught, and Mark is taking it in stride. So you feel bad for him, but you get caught by a 7-time world jiu-jitsu, like a world champion in jiu-jitsu. It's nothing to be ashamed about.
No, hey, it's probably about time we have Nick back on. I'm sure there's another Rec MMA card coming up to promote sometime here soon.
Actually, there is another Throwdown Gatineau show coming up at the end of September. I'm trying to get him on the show. It's in the works, but he is a very busy man these days. He has a new sponsorship deal with a clothing line here in Ottawa, and we're going to try to get something arranged before the show here in Angry Marks, but I'm just waiting to hear back from him at this point.
Yeah, and as long as I'm on that subject, we should try to get Robin Black, too, to comment on the sale of the Score to Rogers and how that's going to affect the Score fighting series.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nobody knows yet. I want to wait and see before we get Robin Black on, because he's on the Fight Network here in Canada, and with the Score fighting series being pretty big and the Score fighting series being picked up by Axis, it'd be a great time to have him on. I just want to see where the dust is settling, because I think once we know what's happening to the Score, we'll have a better idea of what the overall picture is going to be, Stevie. But it is in the works. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff up in the air now, like that interception the Giants just picked off, and looks like they're going to take it to the house, too. It's funny because they had to release a statement right after the sale, like, hey, all you wrestling fans in Canada, don't panic, we're not going to cancel it. So they came out and said that right away, but then they didn't really say anything about MMA, which left me wondering.
Have you ever heard of the World Series of Fighting?
I've heard of it. I don't remember what from, but it rings a bell.
Well, Miguel Torres has signed with that promotion, and he'll be fighting for them on November the 3rd.
Okay, is this a U.S.-based promotion, or is it from a foreign country?
I believe it is American. The show is taking place in Las Vegas.
Okay. Well, if it's a Vegas promotion, that might be why I've heard of it. Maybe it was one of those ones I saw when I was out there for a UFC, because they have all those, like, they kind of do the thing where it's like, WrestleMania weekend, all the minor wrestling promotions put on their cards the same weekend to draw more attention. It's the same way when you go to Vegas for UFC. It's like Tough Enough and all those other promotions. They all have their own cards that same weekend. So maybe there was like a World Series of Fighting one of the weekends I was there.
Well, we talked about Arlovski and Sylvia before, and One Fighting Championships has announced they have eliminated its open attack rule and are adopting pride rules for soccer kicks.
Okay, well, best of luck to them with that.
If they had that rule in place before, Arlovski would have won that fight, Stevie, and there wouldn't be a need for a rubber match.
Very true, very true. But now Kevin is giving us live updates in the Skype chat during our show. It's like, I can still see it. I have a big screen TV. It's not like I can't see what's going on here, buddy.
Did you hear about Jose Aldo this past weekend in a motorcycle accident?
Yeah, and apparently they told him from now on, until the fight takes place, you're taking public transportation.
Hire him a driver.
Yeah, do something, because you don't want to risk another UFC pay-per-view main event going down the tubes. But, it's kind of like when Ben Roethlisberger got in his motorcycle accident. Like, dude, you're not riding a motorcycle again ever. Take a bus. Yeah,
it's just one of those things where, like, you hear UFC champion accident, and in my head I'm thinking, oh, please don't let it be JDS, please don't let it be John Jones, please don't let it be, Anderson Silva. But it's Jose Aldo, you're like, oh god, that show in October, it's cursed. Like, I just had bad visions, you know what I mean? Like, UFC is cursed these days.
Hey, you want to hear an interesting little tidbit? I was looking up Miguel Torres, and I caught something on MMA Junkie. We beat them to the punch. We had Tyson Nam on last week, and they had him on this Monday.
Yeah, and a quick shout-out to our friend Mike Sawyer, who posted the link on his Twitter, and it got a bunch of retweets. So shout-out to Mike Sawyer. Yeah,
actually, he put up the video, too, because I put an entire interview on YouTube, and he put it up on ToughTalkMMA.com. So very big shout-out to Mike Sawyer for that.
Now, I'll admit, I listen to a lot of different music, but, electronic music, DJ-type music, and, hip-hop, I'm not the biggest fan of.
This is the Dead story, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Can you explain? Because I don't understand how these two people, these two entities are partnering up. Why?
Well, I was hoping you were going to mention this because you, as a Canadian, should know all about Deadmau5 because they were on Epic Mealtime.
What?
Deadmau5 was on Epic Mealtime. Yeah, they did a whole episode where they made a Meat Cthulhu and brought it out live on stage during a Deadmau5 concert and then ate the Meat Cthulhu there in front of the audience.
That's crazy talk!
It happens.
Oh, man. No, I recognize the name right away, but I was like, why does, person A and person B, I recognize both, I know both names, but why are they in a partnership? But there's a music video that they've done, and I haven't seen it yet, but I'm probably going to check it out after the show tonight, and it's probably pretty good.
The whole idea is basically UFC wants to partner with anything that's hip and cool so they can be seen as hip and cool themselves. And right now, the whole Deadmau5/Skrillex/dubstep, that's kind of like the cool in thing right now. So that's why they're getting in with Deadmau5, because they figure people who like Deadmau5 who've never seen UFC before, they might want to get into it based on the video and the song.
Well, Sarah McMahon, undefeated Olympic medalist, has signed a contract with Strikeforce, which shouldn't surprise a lot of people, Stevie.
No, and Invicta FC actually sent out a press release about it that I put on the site and basically said, we send her to Strikeforce with our blessings and congratulations.
Yeah, for those who don't know, she is basically one of the most decorated female wrestlers in American history. She won a silver medal back in '04 in Athens at the 63 kilogram mark, which is 139. Now, I'm going to play fantasy booker here, Stevie. Do you put McMahon down the road against Cyborg or Ronda Rousey?
I don't think you can put anybody against Cyroid until she passes a piss test.
True. She is fighting at 135, but she was competing at the Olympics at 139, so she wouldn't have that problem of going up in weight to fight another fighter, you know what I mean?
No, I think she could fight comfortably at 135 or 145. I doubt it would be much of a stretch for her either way.
Now, speaking of Strikeforce, they announced the two big fights for the November 3rd show. And, you got the Frank Mir fight against Daniel Cormier. But Luke Rockhold defending his title against Lorenz Larkin?
Yeah, I don't know about
something?
that. But I don't think he missed anything. It's just that wacky, Luke Rockhold versus anybody, because they got a surprisingly good rating when they did Luke Rockhold and Tim Kennedy. So I think they feel like they've struck lightning in a bottle, and now they can do Luke Rockhold against anybody, and it'll draw.
It's not like Jacare, did a long fight in a few weeks ago against Derek Brunson. I mean, it didn't last more than a minute. Like, I don't think he has to worry about having an 8-week training camp, like worry about being stressed out about an injury, unless he broke his hand on a punch or something.
Right, but if you peaked in training and you're starting to cycle down from that, he probably doesn't want to turn around again and have it in such a short amount of time. So can't blame Jacare for not taking that. Even though he won quickly and didn't get hurt, that still might not be a good decision for him to try to peak again so quick.
Now, I might have to dust off my movie reviews segment, Steve, I used to do way back when on Ring the Bell, now known as Tuesday Night AMP. But there's a movie that's has a UFC theme in it, and it's called Here Comes the Boom with Kevin James. Are you interested in seeing this movie?
Actually, that's not what I thought you were going to mention. I thought you were going to talk about the fact that Warrior just came out on Netflix.
I don't have Netflix.
Oh, well, you missed out then, because that's now available for on-demand streaming for anybody that hasn't seen it. There are a bunch of UFC and TNA and various people that have cameo roles in that film, and it's a story about two brothers who are working their way through a mixed martial arts tournament.
Well, for those who haven't heard it, Kevin James stars in this movie. He's a teacher who becomes a fighter to raise money for his school. And Stevie, you're going to love this. His trainer, Bas Rutten.
Nice. El Guapo.
I remember, what was that movie? It had Jet Li in it and Tom Arnold, and I think it was DMX, and it was like, had a UFC scene in it with like Tito Ortiz and I think Chuck Liddell. They were fighting in a cage or something. It was really weird, but it's funny how we've gone from a minor little scene in a movie to a big time Hollywood movie. Now, I'm not saying Warrior wasn't a big time movie, but this is more the casual fan. Kevin James in a UFC movie type thing, it's quite the leap.
Well, no, but Kevin James has always been a big MMA fan. I mean, half the UFCs they do in Vegas, you can see him sitting cage side, so it's not really a surprise. And that movie that you're thinking of, by the way, is Cradle to the Grave.
Thank you. Well, there's no other way to safely transition into this next one, Stevie, and you brought it up, that someone who was seen cage side at many UFC shows is no longer with us.
Yeah, it's sad news. I don't know how to explain it other than to say that Michael Clark Duncan had a heart attack a while ago, and he was in the hospital afterwards. Conflicting reports that Omarosa of The Apprentice fame performed CPR, but it doesn't matter because he never fully recovered. He stayed in the hospital. He didn't get all the way back to full health, so he finally succumbed to the effects of it just a couple days ago. So a big loss, not only for the MMA community, but for the wrestling community as well, because he was good friends with The Rock. They starred together in The Scorpion King. He was a great actor. He was, Academy Award nominated for his role in The Green Mile, which a lot of people know him from, and by all accounts, a very humble, thoughtful, nice guy, and a big loss to the worlds of MMA, wrestling, and movies.
Yeah, what I read was that he suffered a heart attack in July, and his fiance performed CPR, but they didn't know that he was having a heart attack when they finally he was unconscious for more than 5 minutes before he finally woke up from the effects of the CPR. And after 5 minutes, your brain is deprived of oxygen to the point where you're not sure if you'll fully recover. And, he woke up, everything was fine, they had to do some more tests, and the test showed that, it's going to take a long recovery for him to be 100%, and, it just didn't happen. So definitely a loss in Hollywood, and I wouldn't be surprised to see UFC make some type of mention on the next pay-per-view.
A lot of people were expecting WWE to, because this news came out on Monday, but I don't recall them doing anything at any point during Raw, and some people were complaining about that. But then again, you could say it's a tenuous connection because, it is a movie with The Rock, and it's not like he was there at ringside for Monday Night Raw every week. So I don't know that they were going to, because usually when they do tributes in WWE, they tribute their own, or they tribute somebody from the world of wrestling that everybody would know.
Yeah, the only person not like a fighter you see on the cage for someone who's passed away is Charles Mass Lewis.
Right. But that was a big enough name that, he was a pioneer in the sport when it comes to marketing and promotion. And, if it weren't for Tap Out, there would be a lot of things in this sport that would be completely different. A lot of deals would not have been made. A lot of fighters would not have been sponsored, and the sport would be radically different from what we know it now.
Well, you've heard that we've been talking about this possibility for many, many months now, Stevie, and Dana White said it's close to reality at a catch weight of 180 pounds in Cowboy Stadium. We could see GSP and Anderson Silva.
Until it gets officially announced, I don't assume that it's happening, and I still don't really want it to happen.
You think it would hurt the legend of GSP or the legend of Anderson Silva?
I don't think that BJ Penn or GSP had their legends hurt when they had their fight, but it just strikes me as a no-win situation because GSP has to go up in weight, and he's already his ideal weight. Anderson Silva has to go down in weight, and he's already his ideal weight. It just seems like there's no good reason for either one of these guys to do that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's more of a cash grab to see that, can the UFC fill Cowboy Stadium? Because this is the place of Super Bowls and Pacquiao fights, and, Cage doesn't take that much room as opposed to like a soccer field or football field or, I'm pretty sure they have like a basketball court they put up there for like exhibition or something. Cage doesn't take that much.
But they really don't have
so you gotta
to
think,
prove
hey, how many seats? Wait. You don't know how many seats that will fill for UFC and how much the tickets would cost.
They don't have to prove anything, though. They already filled the Rogers Center. They don't have to prove anything.
Well, they want to break the record. It's the whole Vince McMahon syndrome.
Yeah, that's fine, but
yeah, we can sell out a certain stadium. But let's have it at Detroit. Let's have it 93,000 at the Pontiac Silverdome.
All right. Thank you, Vince McMahon.
600-pound Andre the Giant.
Yeah. And he tore every muscle in his back body slaying him. Can we stick to the topic here? We're talking MMA.
Dana White has actually, you have to give it to Dana White. He has asked some ridiculous questions in his day. And, I think Brock Lesnar has even, at a certain press conference, I think it was a question asked by Dave Meltzer. He said, well, that's a stupid question. Somebody asked Dana White this week, what's the chances of a Fedor-Brock Lesnar super fight?
And I'm sure Dana White said, well, that's a stupid question.
Well, it was on Fuel TV's UFC Tonight, and he was it wasn't a press conference. It was on the Fuel TV UFC show, and there was a question about on the Underground about this fight, and he said a couple of people want to see that fight. He doesn't really have much interest. He said, I'll tell you this, I've done so much to try to get Fedor in UFC. You know how I am, especially if I said it publicly. This is an obsession. I've got to get this thing done. I've tried to get it done, and the crazy thing is now everyone's asked if I can make the fight. And Fedor's retired. The guy retired. I don't know if I could get him back. I couldn't get him when he was fighting. Now we're on such good terms, I'm going to pull him out of retirement?
In other words, it was a pretty stupid question.
Yeah. In a note that surprised me because I want to see these guys get their shots, it's unlikely that Lyoto Machida and Chris Weidman are going to be getting an immediate title shot.
Well, Lyoto had his immediate title shot and he didn't take it, so back of the line, buddy.
Well, Machida, Dana White said he's not next in line. He'll fight another fight. And as far as Weidman, it could happen. Who knows? We'll see what happens. The 185 division is red hot right now. Tons of guys are in the mix. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
So I think he didn't impress him enough to get that title shot. But Weidman is a damn impressive fighter.
All I can say in response to that is put the two of them together in a fight and give the winner of that fight the next shot.
Now, I'm going to correct something I said earlier on this show, and that is that the UFC strayed away from the open tryouts, which they have for this current season starting in a few weeks with Shane Carwin and Roy Nelson. However, the next season of Ultimate Fighter 17, is going back to open tryouts. So anyone listening to this show that wants to try out, tryouts are September 17th in Las Vegas, and they're going to be having middleweight and light heavyweight division fighters.
All right, so a split season like Tough Brazil.
Exactly. The last note I have on here, Stevie, and might as well go full circle with UFC 151 talk. Dana White is quoted as saying that John Jones and Dan Henderson share the blame for the show being canceled.
I saw that headline too on MMA Junkie. I didn't actually click on the story to read the full quotes, but yeah, he's 50-50 splitting the blame, but he's doing that because now he realizes he has to promote John Jones on September 22nd. So if he continues to throw John Jones under the bus to the degree he had, it's going to be hard to get anybody to pay for that pay-per-view.
Do you think he's regretting how harsh he was against John Jones the day after the fight was canceled?
Oh, I don't think Dana White has regretted anything he's ever done a day in his life, and he's not about to now. He's just singing a new tune because it doesn't serve his purposes or make him any money to continue to bury John Jones at this point. He said what he had to say in the heat of the moment when it happened. He continued to say it for a few days afterwards when he was still hot about it. Now that the Jets have cooled and they've got a pay-per-view to promote, he's going to start reminding everybody this is not entirely John Jones' fault, just because lumping all the blame on him does not help him at the pay-per-view at all.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what he said about Greg Jackson, but he still ripped him a new one on this one as well. But, he talked about John Jones, and he said, John and I haven't talked since the incident. Do I have any animosity or hate John Jones right now? I don't, and if I did, I'd tell you. We'll find out as we move along in our relationship where it's at.
Well, that relationship will be tested when they have the pay-per-view on September 22nd, because if John Jones has a bad performance, I'm sure he'll be even more in Dana White's doghouse. And if he has a great performance, that will probably go a long way towards silencing the critics.
I would say that friendship is fractured at the moment, and I have a sneaking suspicion that they won't be filming any more Bud Light commercials anytime soon.
No. In fact, for many reasons, they won't be filming any more Bud Light commercials. Not the least of which. You walked into that one, Peter.
I set you up. I'll admit it.
All right. Well, that's probably as good a point as any to wrap up this show.